The mining ship Prosperity dropped out of hyperspace near the jungle planet Kythera, with a violent shudder that sent Captain Marcus Chen stumbling against the control panel. Red warning lights bathed the bridge in an ominous glow as his navigation officer called out damage reports. Their hyperdrive had suffered a critical failure, stranding them in this remote system until repairs could be completed. "How long until we're spaceworthy again?" Marcus asked his chief engineer through the comm system. "At least 2 weeks, Captain. Maybe 3 if we can't fabricate the quantum resonator components we need." Marcus studied the planet below through the main viewport. Kythera was classified as a wilderness world, inhabited only by various alien species that the Galactic Council had deemed too primitive for contact. Dense green forests covered most of the land masses, broken only by winding rivers and scattered clearings. It looked peaceful enough, but Marcus knew that appearances could be deceiving in the galaxy's frontier regions. "We'll establish a temporary base camp on the surface," he decided. "Send down a survey team to scout for suitable materials and ensure the area is safe." 3 days later, the survey team returned with troubling news. They had detected signs of advanced technology deep in the northern forests, far beyond what any primitive species should possess. Energy readings suggested the presence of weapons and vehicles that matched hegemony military signatures. The hegemony was a ruthless empire that had been expanding aggressively through this sector, enslaving entire species and strip mining their worlds for resources. Marcus felt his blood run cold. If hegemony forces were already on Kythera, it meant they were either hunting the native species or had already begun the conquest process. Either way, it spelled disaster for any indigenous lifeforms on the planet. "Sir, we also detected some unusual biological readings," reported Dr. Sarah Kim, the expedition's xenobiologist. "There appears to be a large feline species in the area, where we picked up the hegemony signatures. The energy patterns suggest they might be in distress." Marcus stared at the data streaming across his screen. Federation law was clear about non-interference with primitive species, but it said nothing about protecting them from genocidal empires. The hegemony had a well-documented history of wiping out entire ecosystems to clear the way for their industrial operations. "Captain, what are your orders?" asked Lieutenant Commander Torres, his second in command. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. His crew of 37 included several former military personnel who had joined the mining expedition, seeking a peaceful life among the stars. But he also knew that none of them would stand by while innocents were slaughtered, regardless of species. "We're going down there," he announced. "Prepare a reconnaissance team with full combat gear. If the hegemony is hunting the natives, we're going to even the odds." The decision went against every regulation in the Federation handbook. But Marcus had spent too many years watching injustice go unchallenged in the name of bureaucratic procedure. Sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules. 2 hours later, Marcus led a team of 8 volunteers through the humid jungle air toward the energy signatures. The forest was alive with strange sounds and alien scents that reminded him why frontier exploration was considered such dangerous work. Ancient trees towered hundreds of feet overhead, their canopy so thick that the ground remained in perpetual twilight. They moved carefully through the undergrowth, following the readings on their portable scanners. The hegemony signatures grew stronger with each passing kilometer, accompanied by what Dr. Kim identified as distress calls from multiple large mammals. "Movement ahead," whispered Sergeant Rodriguez, their team's former Special Forces operative. "I count at least 6 hegemony soldiers surrounding something in that clearing." Marcus raised his binoculars and felt his heart sink at what he saw. 6 armored hegemony troopers stood in a rough circle around a fallen tree, their plasma rifles trained on something hidden behind the massive trunk. Occasionally, one of them would fire a warning shot that sent sparks flying from the wood. "They're hunting something," Torres observed grimly, using it for target practice. Through his enhanced optics, Marcus caught a glimpse of movement behind the fallen tree. Something large and golden with distinctive black stripes. But what made his breath catch were the smaller shapes huddled against the larger form. Cubs, he realized. A family of the native feline species was trapped and being slowly tortured by the hegemony soldiers. "This is wrong on every level," Dr. Kim said quietly over their comm channel. "Those appear to be cubs, probably less than a year old. The adult is trying to shield them." Marcus watched as one of the soldiers stepped closer and fired another shot, this one close enough to singe the adult feline's fur. The creature let out a pained roar but refused to abandon its position protecting the cubs. "Captain, orders?" Rodriguez asked, his hand already moving toward his rifle. Marcus looked at his team's faces and saw the same mixture of anger and determination reflected in each one. They were miners and scientists, not soldiers, but they were also human beings who couldn't stand by and watch cruelty unfold before their eyes. "We end this," Marcus said firmly. "Rodriguez, can you get a clean shot at the soldier on the left? Torres, take the right flank. Everyone else prepare to provide covering fire. We save those cubs and their parent no matter what it takes." The team moved into position with practiced efficiency. Whatever happened next, Marcus knew there would be no going back. They were about to declare war on the hegemony in defense of a species they had never met, and he had never felt more certain about a decision in his life. The plasma rifle burst caught the leftmost hegemony soldier in the chest before he could react. Rodriguez's shot was perfect, dropping the armored trooper instantly. The remaining 5 soldiers spun around in confusion as Marcus's team opened fire from 3 different directions. "Ambush! Take cover!" one of the hegemony soldiers shouted. But the jungle terrain offered little protection against the humans' coordinated assault. Dr. Kim stayed back with the medical kit, while the others advanced through the undergrowth. Torres flanked right and caught 2 soldiers trying to regroup behind a cluster of thick vines. His mining laser, modified for combat use, cut through their armor like paper. The adult feline behind the fallen tree watched the battle unfold with intelligent golden eyes. Instead of fleeing, it seemed to understand that these newcomers were fighting to protect its family. The creature's massive form, easily 8 feet long and covered in brilliant orange fur with black stripes, remained positioned defensively over 3 small cubs. "2 more on your 6, Captain," Rodriguez called out as he reloaded his rifle. Marcus rolled behind a tree trunk just as plasma bolts scorched the air where he had been standing. The hegemony soldiers were well-trained and heavily armed, but they had been caught completely off guard by the human attack. In their arrogance, they had never considered that anyone would interfere with their hunting expedition. Lieutenant Commander Torres circled around and emerged behind the remaining soldiers. His surprise attack eliminated 1 more trooper, leaving just 2 hegemony forces still fighting. These final soldiers had taken cover behind some large rocks and were laying down suppressive fire to keep the humans pinned down. "They're calling for backup," Rodriguez warned, pointing at one soldier who was speaking rapidly into his communication device. "We need to finish this quickly." Marcus made a decision that would have horrified his superiors back at Federation headquarters. He stood up from cover and began walking directly toward the hegemony position, his rifle lowered but ready. The soldiers immediately focused their fire on him, but Marcus had calculated their plasma rifle recharge times perfectly. Between their shots, he sprinted forward and dove behind their rocky shelter. At close range, the fight was over in seconds. The humans had won their first engagement against the hegemony, but Marcus knew this was only the beginning. As the plasma fire died away, an eerie silence settled over the jungle clearing. The adult feline emerged slowly from behind the fallen tree, moving with surprising grace despite what appeared to be several minor wounds from the soldiers' warning shots. The 3 cubs followed close behind, staying pressed against their parents' massive flank. Dr. Kim approached carefully with her medical scanner, speaking in soothing tones even though she knew the creatures couldn't understand her words. "Easy there, beautiful. We're here to help." The adult feline studied each human with remarkable intelligence. Its eyes showed not just awareness but what Marcus could only describe as gratitude. When Dr. Kim extended her hand palm up in a universal gesture of peace, the creature sniffed carefully before allowing her to examine its injuries. "Incredible," Dr. Kim breathed as she ran her scanner over the feline's form. "The neural activity readings suggest intelligence levels comparable to early human development. These aren't just animals, Captain. They're genuinely sentient beings." Marcus felt his anger toward the hegemony intensify. The soldiers hadn't been hunting dangerous predators or eliminating threats to their operations. They had been torturing a family of intelligent beings for their own amusement. "How badly are they hurt?" he asked. "Minor plasma burns, mostly superficial. The parent took the worst of it trying to shield the cubs. I can treat the wounds, but we need to get them somewhere safe first." As if understanding the conversation, the adult feline made a series of low rumbling sounds and began walking deeper into the jungle. It stopped after a few steps and looked back at the humans expectantly. "I think it wants us to follow," Torres observed. Marcus looked at his team and saw the same thought reflected in their faces. They had already crossed the line by attacking hegemony forces. Following the native creatures would violate even more Federation protocols about contact with primitive species. "Rodriguez, can you rig those hegemony communication devices to explode if anyone tries to trace the signal?" "Already done, Captain. Bought us maybe 6 hours before they realized this team went dark. Then we follow our new friends," Marcus decided. "If the hegemony wants a fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." The feline family led them through increasingly dense jungle for nearly an hour, before stopping at what appeared to be a natural rock formation. The adult made more of the rumbling sounds, and suddenly other felines began emerging from hidden caves and crevices in the rocks. Marcus counted at least 20 adults and twice as many cubs of various ages. This wasn't just a family they had saved. It was an entire community that had been hiding from hegemony persecution. The creatures watched the humans with cautious curiosity, clearly having heard about their rescue mission. "Captain," Dr. Kim said quietly, "I'm reading tool use, basic agriculture, and what looks like primitive artistic expression carved into these rock faces. These beings have developed their own culture and society. The hegemony isn't just committing genocide, they're destroying an entire civilization." Marcus looked around at the feline community and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. His mining crew had stumbled into something much larger than a simple rescue mission. They had discovered a species worth protecting and an enemy that needed to be stopped. "Set up a defensive perimeter," he ordered his team. "We're staying here until we figure out how to keep these people safe." The adult feline they had rescued approached Marcus and made the rumbling sound again. This time Marcus thought he detected something almost like spoken language in the complex pattern of growls and purrs. The creature was trying to communicate with him directly. "I think it's saying thank you," Dr. Kim suggested. Marcus looked into the feline's intelligent golden eyes and slowly nodded his head. Whatever happened next, he knew his crew would stand between these remarkable beings and the hegemony forces that wanted to destroy them. The mining expedition had just become a war for survival. Over the next 3 days, Marcus watched his crew transform from peaceful miners into determined defenders of an alien civilization. They established defensive positions around the feline community's rocky shelter, while Dr. Kim worked tirelessly to learn more about their new allies. The felines, who Dr. Kim had begun calling the Kyrathi after sounds in their language, proved to be remarkably sophisticated despite their lack of advanced technology. They had developed complex social structures, artistic traditions, and even primitive mathematics. Most importantly, they possessed an intuitive understanding of the jungle that made them invaluable allies in the coming conflict. "Captain, you need to see this," Dr. Kim called from her makeshift laboratory inside one of the larger caves. Marcus found her studying linguistic patterns on her portable computer, while the adult feline they had rescued, whom the cubs seemed to call Therex, watched with intense interest. The creature had barely left Dr. Kim's side since the rescue, seeming to understand that she was trying to bridge the communication gap between their species. "I've been analyzing their vocalizations, and I think I'm beginning to understand their language structure," Dr. Kim explained excitedly. "It's incredibly sophisticated, with tonal variations that convey complex emotional and contextual information. Watch this." She made a series of carefully modulated sounds that roughly approximated Kyrathi speech patterns. Therex's ears perked up immediately, and he responded with what sounded like an enthusiastic reply. "What did you say?" Marcus asked. "I think I just asked about the hegemony forces in the area, and if I'm reading his response correctly, there are a lot more of them than we initially thought." Therex began making more urgent sounds while gesturing toward the jungle with his massive paws. Other adult Kyrathi gathered around, all speaking at once in their rumbling language. Even without understanding the words, Marcus could sense their growing alarm. "Captain, we have movement on the perimeter." Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system. Multiple airborne contacts approaching from the north. Marcus rushed to the cave entrance and looked up through the forest canopy to see 3 hegemony dropships cutting through the sky. Each ship could carry at least 20 soldiers, meaning they were about to face odds of nearly 2-to-1 against a far better equipped enemy. "All personnel to defensive positions," Marcus ordered. "This is not a drill." The Karathi community reacted with remarkable speed and coordination. Adults began herding cubs toward the deepest caves while others gathered crude but effective weapons. Sharpened spears, slings loaded with rocks, and even primitive crossbows. Marcus realized they had been preparing for this fight long before the humans arrived. Therex approached Marcus and made a series of urgent sounds while pointing toward different areas of the jungle. Dr. Kim listened carefully and then translated. As best she could, "I think he's offering to show us hidden paths through the forest. The Karathi know secret routes that could give us a tactical advantage." Marcus looked at the massive feline and nodded. "Tell him we accept his help." The first hegemony dropship landed in a clearing 2 kilometers away, disgorging armed soldiers who immediately began advancing toward the rocky shelter. Marcus watched through his binoculars as they moved in standard formation, confident in their technological superiority, but completely unprepared for jungle warfare. "Rodriguez, take half the team and follow Therex through those hidden paths. Set up ambush positions along their most likely approach routes. Torres, you're with me. We'll hold the main defensive line here." What followed was unlike any battle Marcus had ever imagined. The Karathi proved to be natural guerrilla fighters, using their intimate knowledge of the jungle to harass and confuse the hegemony forces. They could move through the dense undergrowth almost silently, appearing from nowhere to attack with primitive weapons before melting back into the forest. Therex fought alongside Rodriguez's team with devastating effectiveness. His massive claws could tear through hegemony armor, while his natural agility allowed him to dodge plasma fire that would have killed a human. More importantly, he seemed to understand human tactical concepts and could coordinate his attacks with the mining crew's movements. "These aren't just animals," Rodriguez reported over the comm. "This big cat is fighting like he's been trained in small unit tactics. He just flanked 3 soldiers while we kept them pinned down with covering fire." Dr. Kim monitored the battle from the caves while treating wounded Karathi and humans alike. Through her growing understanding of their language, she learned that the Karathi had been fighting the hegemony for months before the humans arrived. They had lost many family groups to the invaders but had never stopped resisting. "Captain, they're not just defending their territory," she reported. "They're fighting for the right to exist as a free people. This is their independence war." The first wave of hegemony soldiers was repelled within 2 hours, but Marcus knew they would return with heavier weapons and more troops. The mining crew had won a small victory, but the real war was just beginning. As night fell over the jungle, Marcus found himself sitting beside a small fire with Therex and several other adult Karathi. They were sharing a meal of local fruits and discussing strategy through a combination of Dr. Kim's translation efforts and simple gestures. Despite the language barrier, Marcus felt a growing bond with these remarkable beings. Therex made a series of soft rumbling sounds while, looking directly at Marcus, Dr. Kim listened carefully and then smiled. "He's giving you a name in their language. Verathek, which roughly translates to friend who protects cubs or maybe guardian of the young. I think it's a title of honor." Marcus looked at the massive feline and felt humbled by the trust these beings had placed in him and his crew. They had chosen to risk everything to protect a species they barely understood, and somehow that decision felt like the most important thing he had ever done. "Tell him we're honored to fight alongside the Karathi," Marcus said, "and tell him we're not leaving until every last hegemony soldier is off this planet." Therex seemed to understand even before Dr. Kim finished translating. The great cat reached out with one massive paw and gently touched Marcus's shoulder, in what could only be described as a gesture of friendship and respect. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and greater dangers, but tonight, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years of mining expeditions and corporate dealings. He felt like he was fighting for something that truly mattered. The second hegemony assault came at dawn with overwhelming force. 3 more dropships had arrived during the night, and Marcus counted over 100 enemy soldiers surrounding their position. Worse still, they had brought heavy weapons including plasma cannons and powered armor suits that could shrug off small arms fire. "Captain, we're outgunned and outnumbered 5-1. Torres reported grimly. "Our position is going to be overrun within the hour." Marcus watched through his scope as hegemony soldiers methodically advanced through the jungle, using their superior technology to burn away cover and create clear fields of fire. The mining crew's improvised defenses wouldn't hold against this kind of concentrated assault, But the Karathi had other plans. Therex approached Marcus with urgent sounds and gestures, pointing toward the deepest parts of the cave system. Dr. Kim translated quickly, as more adult Karathi gathered around them. He says there are ancient tunnels that connect to other Karathi communities throughout this region. They want to evacuate everyone to a place called the Heartstone Place, where they can make a stronger defense. How far? Marcus asked. 2 days through the tunnel system, but the passages are too narrow for hegemony vehicles or heavy weapons. It would level the playing field. Marcus looked at his exhausted crew and the dozens of Karathi cubs who were depending on them for protection. A fighting retreat through unknown tunnel systems seemed like suicide, but staying here definitely was. We move in 10 minutes, he decided. Take only essential supplies and ammunition. The evacuation began under covering fire from Rodriguez and his team, who held the perimeter while civilians moved into the tunnel entrances. The underground passages were indeed narrow, forcing everyone to move single file through winding stone corridors that had been carved by generations of Karathi claws. Therex led the way with several other adult males, their night vision far superior to human capabilities in the absolute darkness of the tunnels. The cubs followed close behind their parents, remarkably disciplined despite their obvious fear. Marcus's crew brought up the rear, using portable lights to navigate the treacherous footing. Movement behind us, Rodriguez whispered over the comm. Hegemony soldiers have found the tunnel entrance. The sound of plasma fire echoed through the stone passages as enemy troops tried to follow them underground. But the tunnels had been designed by creatures who understood the jungle better than any off-world invader. Hidden passages led to dead ends while the main route twisted and branched in ways that confused anyone without Karathi guides. They're getting lost in there, Torres observed with satisfaction. These tunnels are like a maze designed by someone who thinks in 3 dimensions. 6 hours into their underground journey, the group emerged into a vast natural cavern lit by phosphorescent fungi growing on the walls. Marcus stared in amazement at what could only be described as an underground city. Hundreds of Karathi had gathered here from across the region, creating a refugee community in the heart of the mountain. The Heartstone Place, Dr. Kim breathed in wonder. This is their most sacred site. At the center of the cavern stood a massive crystal formation that pulsed with internal light. Adult Karathi were gathered around it in what appeared to be some kind of ceremony, their voices raised in harmonious song that echoed through the chamber. Even the youngest cubs fell silent in the presence of whatever this place represented to their culture. Therex approached the crystal with obvious reverence and made a series of formal-sounding declarations. Other Karathi leaders responded in kind, and Marcus sensed he was witnessing something of enormous cultural significance. What's happening? He asked Dr. Kim. I think Therex is telling them about the alliance with humans. The other leaders are debating whether to trust us with their most sacred secrets. An elderly Karathi with graying fur and numerous scars approached Marcus directly. This individual moved with the unmistakable authority of a senior leader, and when he spoke, every other Karathi in the cavern listened respectfully. Dr. Kim translated haltingly. He's asking why humans would risk their lives for a species they just met. He wants to know what we hope to gain from this alliance. Marcus looked around at the hundreds of Karathi refugees, many of them injured or exhausted from fleeing hegemony persecution. He thought about his comfortable life back in Federation space, where the worst dangers he faced were mining accidents and contract disputes. Tell him we fight because it's the right thing to do, Marcus said simply. Tell him that humans believe all intelligent beings deserve to live free from oppression. The elderly leader listened to Dr. Kim's translation and then studied Marcus with ancient, wise eyes. After a long moment, he approached the crystal formation and placed his paws against its surface. The entire structure began to glow more brightly, and Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation in the air. Captain, Dr. Kim said in amazement, I think he just activated some kind of technology. These crystals aren't just decorative, they're functional devices. The cavern filled with holographic displays showing tactical information about hegemony movements across the planet. Marcus realized he was looking at a sophisticated intelligence network that the Karathi had been using to track their oppressors. The primitive species had technology that Federation scientists would kill to study. They've been monitoring hegemony communications, Torres observed. Look at these troop movement patterns. The enemy has forces spread across 3 continents. Therex approached Marcus with excited sounds, gesturing toward the holographic displays. Through Dr. Kim's improving translation skills, Marcus learned that the Karathi had been planning a coordinated uprising against the hegemony occupation. They had just been waiting for the right moment to strike. They want to know if we'll help them take their planet back, Dr. Kim said. Not just defend this one community, but launch a full-scale rebellion against the hegemony forces. Marcus looked at his crew of 37 miners and scientists, then at the hundreds of Karathi warriors who had gathered in this sacred place. The Federation would never officially sanction such an operation, but sometimes the right thing to do existed outside official channels. Tell them yes, Marcus said firmly. Tell them humans and Karathi will fight together until every hegemony soldier is driven from this world. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of Karathi voices joined in a victory song that shook the very foundations of the mountain. The crystal formation pulsed with brilliant light, and Marcus realized they were witnessing the birth of an interspecies alliance that would change both civilizations forever. The elderly leader approached Marcus and spoke directly to him in heavily accented but unmistakable Federation standard. Thank you, friend of Cubs, he said in a voice like distant thunder. Together we will show the hegemony what happens when they threaten our children. Marcus felt his blood run cold as he realized the implications. The Karathi had been listening to human communications and learning their language for months. They were far more advanced than anyone had suspected, and they had been planning for this moment long before his ship ever arrived. The mining crew hadn't just stumbled into a rescue mission. They had been recruited for a war that would determine the fate of an entire world. The war for Cathara began 3 days later, with simultaneous strikes across 5 continents. Marcus watched in amazement as the Karathi revealed military capabilities that their primitive appearance had completely concealed. They had spent months studying hegemony tactics and technology, preparing for this coordinated rebellion. From the Crystal Command Center, Marcus coordinated human technical expertise with Karathi knowledge of local terrain and enemy positions. His mining crew had become military advisors to an alien species that proved far more sophisticated than any Federation survey had indicated. Strike. Team Alpha reports successful. Capture of the Northern Communications Array, Torres announced from his position at the holographic displays. The Karathi infiltrated through maintenance, tunnels that don't appear on any hegemony maps. Therex and his hunting pack had been assigned to eliminate isolated hegemony outposts using classic guerrilla tactics. But instead of primitive spears and claws, they now carried human-modified plasma weapons and communication devices. The combination of alien agility and human technology proved devastatingly effective. Varith Thek, came Therex's voice over the comm system, using Marcus's Karathi name with obvious pride. Northern base eliminated. 37 enemies neutralized, no Karathi casualties. Dr. Kim continued her role as translator and liaison, but her real breakthrough came when she discovered that the crystal technology could interface directly with human computer systems. The Karathi had developed biotechnology that could adapt to almost any electronic system, giving them unprecedented intelligence capabilities. Captain, you need to see this, she called from her workstation. The crystals have been passively monitoring hegemony communications for months. They know everything about enemy troop strengths, supply lines, and strategic objectives. Marcus studied the data streaming across the holographic displays and felt his confidence in their cause growing stronger. The hegemony had seriously underestimated their opposition, treating the Karathi as simple animals to be hunted for sport. That arrogance was about to cost them dearly. What's their primary objective on this planet? He asked. Rare earth mining, specifically crystalline formations like the ones here in the sacred caverns. The hegemony wants to strip mine the entire Heartstone place for industrial materials. The elderly Karathi leader, who had introduced himself as Elder Korath, approached with several other tribal representatives. His Federation standard had improved dramatically over the past few days, suggesting a remarkable capacity for learning. The enemy seeks to destroy our most sacred sites for their machines, Korath said with controlled anger. They would tear apart the stones that hold our history and culture to build more weapons for conquest. Marcus felt his own anger rising. The hegemony wasn't just committing genocide, They were attempting cultural annihilation on a scale that violated every principle of civilized behavior. No wonder the Karathi had been preparing for this rebellion with such determination. "What do you need from us to drive them off permanently?" Marcus asked. "We need to capture their command ship in orbit," Korath replied. "Without space support, their ground forces cannot resupply or retreat. They will be trapped on a hostile world with limited resources." Marcus looked at the tactical displays showing hegemony orbital positions. The command ship was a heavy cruiser with enough firepower to glass entire continents, but it was also designed to fight other starships rather than planetary insurgencies. "If they could somehow get aboard—" "My ship is still in orbit undergoing repairs," Marcus said thoughtfully. "It's not armed for combat, but it might be able to approach the hegemony vessel without triggering immediate hostility." "You would attempt to board an enemy warship with a mining vessel?" Korath asked with what Marcus suspected was amusement. "Humans have a saying about desperate times calling for desperate measures," Marcus replied. "But we'd need Karathi help to pull it off." Tharex had returned from his successful raid and was listening to the conversation with obvious interest. He made several excited sounds that Dr. Kim translated. "He says Karathi can survive in vacuum for short periods using natural biological adaptations. They could accompany a human boarding party and provide close combat support." Marcus stared at the massive feline and realized they were discussing something that would have been considered impossible just a week ago. Human miners and alien predators working together to capture a starship from one of the galaxy's most feared military forces will need detailed intelligence on the ship's layout and security systems, he said. Elder Korath gestured toward the crystal displays, which immediately began showing detailed schematics of the hegemony command vessel. "We have been listening to their communications and mapping their ship systems for many days. The crystals can interface with any technology given sufficient observation time." Rodriguez whistled in amazement as deck plans and security protocols scrolled past. "They know this ship better than its own crew does. Look at these guard rotation schedules and maintenance access points." The plan that emerged over the next few hours was audacious to the point of insanity. Marcus's mining ship would approach the hegemony vessel under the pretense of requesting assistance with engine problems. Meanwhile, a team of humans and Karathi would use the ship's mining equipment to tunnel through the enemy vessel's hull at a point identified by the Crystal Intelligence Network. The hegemony crew will be focused on the apparent diplomatic contact while we breach their ship from an unexpected direction, Marcus explained to his assembled team. "Once inside, we capture the bridge and turn their own weapons against the remaining ground forces." "Sir, with all due respect, this plan is completely insane," Torres observed. "Yes, it is," Marcus agreed. "But it's also our best chance to end this war quickly and prevent the hegemony from bringing in reinforcements." Tharex approached Marcus and placed a massive paw on his shoulder in the gesture of friendship they had developed. When he spoke, his words were in careful but clear Federation standard. "Vareth Thek leads, Karathi follow. We trust friend who protects cubs with our lives and our world." Looking around at his crew and their alien allies, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders once again. In the space of a few days, he had gone from being a simple mining captain to the leader of an interspecies alliance fighting for freedom. The Federation bureaucrats would probably court-martial him for what he was about to attempt, but some things were more important than regulations. "All right, people," he said with grim determination. "Let's go steal ourselves a starship." The assault on the hegemony command vessel would begin in 6 hours, and Marcus knew that the outcome would determine not just the fate of Cathera, but the future relationship between humans and Karathi. Success would forge an alliance that could change the balance of power in this entire sector of the galaxy. Failure would mean the extinction of one of the most remarkable species he had ever encountered. Either way, there was no turning back now. The mining ship Prosperity limped through space toward the hegemony command vessel with carefully simulated engine damage and a transponder broadcasting distress signals. Marcus sat in the captain's chair, trying to look appropriately desperate while his crew prepared for the most dangerous operation of their lives. "Hegemony vessel. This is Captain Chen of the Federation mining ship Prosperity," he transmitted. "We're experiencing critical engine failure and request immediate assistance." The response came within minutes, delivered in the arrogant tone Marcus had come to expect from hegemony forces. "Federation vessel, You are ordered to maintain current heading and prepare for boarding inspection. Any deviation will be considered an hostile act. Understood? Marcus replied while simultaneously signaling his hidden assault team. In the mining ship's cargo bay, 8 humans and 12 Karathi warriors prepared to tunnel through space using modified industrial equipment. Therex wore a specially adapted environmental suit that accommodated his massive frame while providing life support for vacuum operations. The sight of the great feline in military gear would have been amusing under different circumstances, but Marcus felt only respect for the courage these beings were showing. Breach charges armed and ready, Rodriguez reported from the cargo bay. Karathi team confirms ready status. Dr. Kim monitored the approach from her position at the sensor station. I'm reading normal activity patterns aboard the hegemony ship. They think we're just another broken-down mining crew looking for help. The plan required perfect timing and more luck than Marcus was comfortable counting on. As the Prosperity drew closer to the enemy vessel, the assault team would use mining charges to blast a hole in the hegemony ship's hull at a precise location identified by the Karathi intelligence network. The resulting decompression would create chaos while the boarding party fought their way to the bridge. Docking clamps engaging, Torres announced as the ships came together. Hegemony boarding party requests permission to come aboard. Granted, Marcus replied, knowing that his apparent cooperation would buy them precious extra minutes. We're grateful for any assistance you can provide. The hegemony soldiers who entered the Prosperity were typical of their species, tall, pale humanoids with cybernetic implants that enhanced their physical capabilities. They moved with the casual arrogance of conquerors who had never faced serious resistance. Your ship will be impounded for violations of hegemony, territorial sovereignty, their leader announced without preamble. Your crew will be processed for labor assignment. I see, Marcus said calmly while watching his tactical display. The assault team was in position and waiting for his signal. And what about the native species on the planet below? What native species? The hegemony officer replied with cruel amusement. Our surveys indicate no intelligent life on this world. That was all Marcus needed to hear. Execute breach protocol, he said quietly into his comm unit. The explosion that followed shook both ships as mining charges tore a massive hole in the hegemony vessel's hull. Emergency alarms began wailing as the command ship's crew scrambled to respond to the unexpected attack. The hegemony soldiers on the Prosperity spun around in confusion, but Marcus's crew was ready for them. The firefight in the mining ship's corridors was brief but intense. Federation mining equipment might not have been designed for combat, but it proved remarkably effective when used creatively. More importantly, the Karathi assault team was already inside the enemy vessel and fighting their way toward critical systems. Breach successful, Therex's voice crackled over the comm. Karathi warriors engaging enemy forces on multiple decks. Resistance lighter than expected. Marcus and his remaining crew fought their way across to the hegemony ship through the makeshift airlock created by the mining charges. The enemy vessel's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers designed for maximum efficiency rather than comfort. Emergency lighting cast everything in an ominous red glow as life support systems struggled to compensate for the hull breach. Bridge is 3 levels up and forward, Dr. Kim reported, consulting the ship schematics the Karathi had provided, but we'll have to fight through their main security station. The security station proved to be heavily defended by automated systems and hegemony soldiers in powered armor. But the defenders had never faced an enemy like the Karathi, who could move through ventilation systems and attack from unexpected angles with devastating effectiveness. Therex emerged from an air duct directly behind 2 armored soldiers and demonstrated why his species had earned the respect of every predator on Cathara. His natural weapons could pierce even military-grade armor when applied with sufficient force and precision. Path clear to command deck, he reported in his increasingly fluent Federation standard. Enemy morale breaking as word spreads of boarding action. Marcus led the final assault on the bridge with a mixed team of humans and Karathi. They found the hegemony command crew desperately trying to coordinate a response to the rebellion on the planet below while simultaneously dealing with the chaos aboard their own ship. Surrender your vessel and you will be treated according to the laws of war, Marcus announced as his team secured the bridge. Continue resistance and face the consequences. The hegemony captain, a cybernetically enhanced individual with obvious military experience, studied the mixed human Kyrathi assault team with calculating eyes. You are violating numerous Federation regulations by interfering with hegemony operations, he said finally. Federation doesn't recognize hegemony territorial claims over sovereign worlds, Marcus replied. And Kythera belongs to the Kyrathi people, not to your mining consortium. The Kyrathi are not recognized as a sapient species by any galactic authority, the captain argued. They are animals with no legal standing. Therex stepped forward and spoke in perfect Federation standard with only a slight accent that betrayed his alien origins. We are the Kyrathi people, and we claim our world by right of birth and blood. Your presence here is an invasion that we reject. The hegemony captain's expression shifted from arrogance to shock as he realized he was facing not primitive animals but a technologically capable civilization that had been hiding its true nature. Impossible. Our survey showed no evidence of advanced culture. Your survey showed what we chose to reveal. Elder Korath's voice came over the ship's communication system. We have been watching and learning while you believed yourselves superior. Now you will leave our world or face the consequences of your arrogance. Marcus took control of the ship's command systems and began broadcasting surrender demands to the remaining hegemony forces on the planet. All hegemony personnel are ordered to cease hostilities and prepare for immediate evacuation. Your command ship has been captured and your orbital support eliminated. Further resistance is futile. The response from the surface was swift and decisive. Faced with the loss of their space-based support and increasingly effective Kyrathi resistance, the remaining hegemony forces began surrendering in organized groups. The rebellion had succeeded beyond Marcus's wildest expectations. Captain, Dr. Kim called from the communication station. I'm receiving messages from Kyrathi communities across the planet. The hegemony occupation has collapsed completely. They're celebrating the liberation of their world. Marcus looked around the captured bridge at his exhausted crew and their Kyrathi allies. They had achieved something unprecedented, a successful interspecies military alliance that had driven off one of the galaxy's most feared empires. But he knew this victory would have far-reaching consequences that none of them could fully predict. The Federation would demand explanations. The hegemony would want revenge, and the Kyrathi would need to decide how to engage with the broader galactic community now that their secret was revealed. But for now, Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he watched Therex and his warriors secure the ship that had threatened their world. The Beast-Tamer and his allies had proven that courage and determination could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. 6 months after the liberation of Kythera, Marcus stood in the Federation Council chambers on Earth facing a tribunal that would determine his fate. The charges were serious: violation of non-interference protocols, unauthorized military action, and conspiracy to commit acts of war against a sovereign government. But the man they were judging was no longer the simple mining captain who had left Federation space a year ago. Captain Chen, the lead prosecutor began, you admit to deliberately violating Federation law by interfering with the internal affairs of a primitive species. I admit to defending innocent beings from genocide, Marcus replied calmly. And I reject the characterization of the Kyrathi as primitive. The evidence clearly shows they possess a sophisticated civilization that was deliberately concealing its capabilities. The proceedings had been going on for 3 days, with Federation officials struggling to understand how a mining expedition had evolved into an interspecies alliance that was reshaping the political landscape of an entire star system. The Kyrathi delegation, led by Elder Korath and Therex, had insisted on attending the tribunal to speak on Marcus's behalf. The Kyrathi people owe our freedom to Vareth Thek and his brave crew, Therex testified in his carefully learned Federation standard. He protected our cubs when others would have turned away. He fought beside us when others would have fled. He showed us that not all aliens seek to exploit or destroy. Dr. Kim had been called as an expert witness to explain her linguistic and cultural discoveries. Her testimony painted a picture of the Kyrathi as a species with remarkable adaptability and intelligence, capable of rapid technological advancement when given proper motivation. They learned Federation standard in a matter of weeks, she explained to the stunned tribunal. Their biotechnology can interface with any computer system, and their social structures are more sophisticated than many Federation member worlds. We didn't uplift them, we simply gave them a reason to reveal capabilities they had always possessed, The prosecution's case began to crumble when Federation intelligence presented evidence of hegemony war crimes on dozens of worlds. The mining expedition to Kythera had been part of a larger pattern of expansion and exploitation that threatened the stability of the entire frontier region. Captain Chen's actions, while technically illegal, prevented what our analysts believe would have been a massacre of unprecedented scale, testified Admiral Morrison, the Federation's chief intelligence officer. The hegemony was using Kythera as a testing ground for new extermination techniques they planned to deploy against other indigenous species. Marcus watched the faces of the tribunal members as they processed this information. He could see their certainty wavering as they realized they were judging not just one man's decisions, but the fundamental principles that guided Federation policy toward non-aligned worlds. The turning point came when Elder Korath addressed the tribunal directly. The ancient Karathi leader had traveled across the galaxy to speak for his people, and his words carried the weight of a civilization that had survived in secret for generations. Honorable judges of the Federation, Korath began in his deep, rumbling voice, we come before you not as supplicants seeking protection, but as equals requesting recognition. The Karathi people have watched your civilization from afar and found much to admire. Your principles of justice and freedom inspired us to reveal ourselves when the time was right. And when was that time right? Asked one of the tribunal members. When we found humans willing to die for our children, Korath replied simply. When we discovered that your highest ideals were not mere words but living principles that guided good people to make difficult choices. The prosecutor made one final attempt to salvage his case. Captain Chen violated explicit Federation law. Good intentions do not excuse criminal actions. Then change the law, Marcus said quietly, rising to address the tribunal. If Federation law prevents us from protecting innocent beings from genocide, then the law is wrong. If our principles of justice only apply to species that look like us or think like us, then those principles are worthless. He looked directly at each tribunal member as he continued. The Karathi didn't need us to save them. They had the strength and intelligence to win their freedom on their own. What they needed was a sign that the galaxy contained civilizations worth joining, people worth trusting with their secrets. We gave them that sign, and in return they gave us something invaluable, proof that the universe is full of wonders we haven't even imagined yet. The tribunal deliberated for 2 hours before returning with their verdict. Marcus stood between Therex and Dr. Kim as the lead judge read the decision that would determine not just his future, but the precedent for how the Federation would handle similar situations. Captain Marcus. Chen, this tribunal finds you guilty of violating Federation non-interference protocols, the judge announced. However, given the extraordinary circumstances of your case and the positive outcomes that resulted from your actions, this tribunal recommends clemency and immediate reassignment to the Frontier Contact Division. Marcus felt relief wash over him. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, this tribunal recommends that the Federation Council formally recognize the Karathi people as a sovereign civilization and begin negotiations for a mutual defense treaty. The evidence presented here suggests that our current policies regarding contact with developing species are inadequate for the realities of frontier exploration. The courtroom erupted in surprised murmurs as the implications of the decision became clear. The Federation was essentially admitting that its first contact protocols needed fundamental revision based on lessons learned from the Kythera incident. Therex approached Marcus with the slow, dignified gait he used for formal occasions. Verethek will continue to protect cubs? He asked with obvious hope. Different cubs on different worlds, Marcus replied with a smile. But yes, old friend, we'll continue protecting those who need protection. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Federation vessel Harmony, as it departed Earth for the frontier regions. His crew was a carefully selected mix of diplomats, scientists, and former military personnel trained in peaceful contact procedures. Their mission was to seek out developing civilizations and establish positive relationships before hostile forces, like the hegemony, could exploit them. Dr. Kim had accepted the position of chief xenobiologist, while Rodriguez and Torres had joined as security specialists. Most remarkably, Therex had volunteered to serve as an alien liaison officer, becoming the first non-human to hold an official position in Federation service. New ship, new mission, same goal, Torres observed as they entered hyperspace. Protecting those who can't protect themselves. Actually, Marcus corrected. Looking at Therex's station where the great Karathi was studying star charts with obvious excitement. I think our new goal is finding those who can protect themselves and helping them find their place in a larger community. The stars streaked past the viewports as the Harmony began its journey to worlds unknown. Somewhere in the vast galaxy, other species were struggling against oppression or hiding their true capabilities from hostile aliens. Marcus and his crew would find them, offer friendship instead of exploitation, and prove that the universe was large enough for all of its children to thrive. Behind them, Kythera remained free under Karathi rule, its crystal cities growing more beautiful each day, as the people rebuilt their world according to their own vision. The cubs that Marcus had helped save were growing into adults who would never know the fear of hiding their intelligence from alien invaders. The Beast-Tamer had become something greater, a bridge between species, a protector of freedom, and a living symbol of what the galaxy could achieve when courage and compassion guided technology and power. The story that had begun with 3 frightened cubs hiding behind a fallen tree had become the foundation for a new age of interspecies cooperation. And in the deepest caves of Kythera, the crystal archives recorded it all for future generations to remember.